Welcome to Betrayal Affairs. In today's video, I want to take you on a journey, not one of betrayal in the way you might expect, but of rediscovery, resilience, and the quiet kind of love that doesn't always make headlines but can change a life forever. My name is Emily Carter, and if you had asked me 10 years ago what my life would look like at 42, I would have painted you a very different picture. I imagine stability, laughter in a warm kitchen, and maybe even a house full of grandchildren someday. But life doesn't always follow the plans we write in our heads. Sometimes, it tears up that script without warning and leaves you holding pieces you don't know how to put back together. I live in Bend, Oregon, a town that, at first glance, feels like something out of a postcard. Pine-covered mountains frame the horizon, the river winds through like a ribbon of silver, and the streets are lined with cozy coffee shops and friendly faces. It's the kind of place where everyone seems to know each other's names, where neighbors wave from their porches and the seasons make their presence known in the most beautiful ways. I once thought that this backdrop would be where all of my happy ever afters would unfold. For 15 years, I believed I was living that dream, until the night it ended. It wasn't a fight that broke us. There were no slammed doors, no plates shattering against walls. Instead, there was just stillness. A stillness so cold that it burned. Mark, my husband, came home one evening with his shoulders set in that strange, determined way that made me feel uneasy. His eyes didn't search for mine like they used to. In one hand, he clutched a small duffel bag. In the other, the keys we had shared for so many years. Without hesitation, without preamble, he stood in our kitchen, the one where we had shared countless breakfasts and late-night conversations, and said words that cut deeper than I could have imagined. I can't do this anymore. That was it. No explanation. No gentle softening of the blow. Just a quiet, steady voice delivering the end of my marriage. Behind him, the microwave hummed, heating up a dinner I no longer had the appetite to eat. I remember the absurd thought crossing my mind that the sound seemed far too normal for the moment. And then, before I could even catch my breath, he turned, walked out the door, and didn't come back. In the first few days, I told myself I would be fine. I repeated it like a mantra, "You're strong, Emily. You'll get through this." I put on smiles for my 17-year-old son, Noah, who was in his final year of high school. I cooked meals, I asked about his homework, I tried to keep our routines alive. But when the house grew quiet at night and his bedroom door closed, I would sit alone on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of every second. The silence was unbearable, not because it was empty, but because it was filled with all the words I wished I could say to someone who was no longer there. Noah never asked me for details. He never pushed for the why behind his father's absence. That's not to say he didn't feel it, of course he did, but he chose his own way of responding. And that way was to simply stay. Every afternoon, like clockwork, I'd hear the front door creak open and his familiar footsteps in the hallway. Sometimes he'd walk into the living room holding 2 mugs of tea, sometimes a plate of cookies or a bag of chips. He'd plop down next to me on the couch, turn on a movie or a game show, and sit with me. No grand gestures, just presence. At first, I assumed he was doing it because he felt obligated, that he was trying to fill the space his father had left. I didn't want to be a weight on his shoulders, so I tried to tell him it wasn't necessary. But one night, as we were halfway through Back to the Future, a movie we'd watched together at least a dozen times, he glanced over at me, grinned, and said, "I like hanging out with you, Mom." Those 6 words melted something inside me that had been frozen since the night Mark left. From that moment, our days began to take on new rhythms. Sunday mornings became sacred for pancakes, though pancakes was more of a competitive sport than a meal in our house. Noah swore by chocolate chips, while I argued that bananas were the only way to go. Our debates over toppings became part of the fun. Saturday evenings turned into board game nights. Sometimes we'd bring out the old Monopoly set, its corners frayed from years of use, and he'd let me win, or at least, he thought he was subtle about it. Those little moments began to stitch pieces of me back together. Friends would tell me to get back out there, to join a club, meet new people, find a distraction. I tried, I really did. I went to a pottery class, thinking maybe working with clay would feel grounding. But halfway through, someone played a love song on the radio, and I found myself in tears, hands frozen mid-shape. I joined a walking group, but after 2 weeks, I couldn't bring myself to go back. It wasn't that I didn't want to heal, I just wasn't ready. Noah was the only one who seemed to understand that without me having to explain. He never told me to hurry. He just kept showing up. Graduation day came faster than I expected. I sat in the front row, my heart swelling with pride as I watched him walk across that stage in his cap and gown. He spotted me, and like he had before every soccer game, gave me a thumbs up. A simple gesture, but one that said, "We're in this together." When he chose to attend college right here in Bend, I didn't question it, though I knew he had offers from bigger cities, places with more opportunities. One evening while we were making dinner, chopping vegetables side by side in our small kitchen, I finally asked why he hadn't gone to Seattle. He shrugged, tossed a carrot into the bowl, and said, "I just didn't want to leave you alone." That answer didn't make me sad. It made me grateful, more than I could ever express. The fall after his graduation, he moved into a small apartment near campus, but our routines stayed alive. He'd still come over on Sundays for pancakes, still argue about toppings, still show up for board game nights. We added new traditions too, binge-watching crime documentaries, pausing every 10 minutes to play detective and guess the ending. I started to feel like myself again. I even picked up painting, a hobby I hadn't touched since my teenage years. On warm afternoons, I'd set up an easel on the porch and lose myself in colors and brushstrokes. Sometimes I painted the trees, sometimes the endless sky, and sometimes the old blue rocking chair Mark had left behind. Oddly enough, that chair became mine, so much mine that I even named it Walter. With time, I began volunteering at the local community center, helping women who were navigating their own heartbreaks. I realized that sharing my story might help someone else find their footing, just as Noah had helped me find mine. My life started expanding again. I made new friends. I hosted book clubs. I even went on a few casual coffee dates, nothing serious, just small steps back into the wider world. One rainy evening stands out in my memory. I was curled up on the couch, flipping through an old photo album I hadn't touched in years. Images of Christmas mornings, family road trips, birthday parties, moments frozen in time. The sound of the rain on the windows made the silence feel heavier. And then, the front door opened. Noah walked in, soaked from head to toe, holding up a paper bag with a triumphant grin. "Brought your favorite," he said, "garlic knots from our favorite Italian place." He sat down next to me without asking what I was looking at, and together we turned each page of the album. We didn't need to talk much. Sometimes the most healing thing is simply having someone there who shows up without needing an invitation. As the years passed, my independence grew. I transformed the spare bedroom into a painting studio. I began selling my art at the weekend market. Life no longer felt like something I was enduring, it felt like something I was actively choosing. One afternoon, I found a letter in my mailbox with no return address. Inside, a short note from Mark, "I hope you're doing well. I heard Noah's doing great. You look happy." I'm glad. Reading it didn't stir up the storm I expected. There was no anger, no sadness, just peace. I tucked it into a drawer and went back to my day. Because I was happy. Truly happy. One summer, Noah and I took a road trip down the coast, just the two of us. We rolled the windows down, let the salty wind tangle our hair, stopped at every little diner and roadside lookout we passed. We talked for hours about everything, his plans, my hopes, funny stories from his childhood that we both remembered differently. We laughed until our cheeks hurt. In those moments, I realized that life had, in its own way, come full circle. I think back to the version of me who stood in that kitchen the night Mark left, fragile, lost, afraid. And I look at the woman I am now, strong, smiling, standing on her own 2 feet. Noah didn't fix me. He didn't need to. But by simply being there, by reminding me that love can still be present in the smallest gestures, he helped me remember who I was and who I wanted to be. So when people ask how I survived, how I moved forward, I tell them this: my son didn't just stay by my side, he made my life brighter than I ever thought possible. And I love it. I truly do.